guys, and I'm here today with a Hyundai i30N. Now in 2017 this was released as a 6-speed manual, but since then they've upgraded it to a performance pack in a 6-speed manual, a fastback and also an 8-speed DCT. And we're going to see what the difference is between the three. So let's hit the road.
The i30N is the OG of the N range, which has since received an update from 2017. Starting off with the equivalent to the original, we have the manual front-wheel drive hatchback, and underneath the bonnet there's a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine producing 271 brake horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque, which gives you a 0 to 60 time of 5.8 seconds. With only the performance pack on offer, you now get 19-inch alloys, driver modes, electronic limited slip differential, larger brakes and adaptive dampers, all as standard. And this is the same across models, including the fully spec'd interior with a 10-inch media displays, while having enough room in the rear for 4 or 5 adults and shopping in the boot. So now all that's left to do is put the manual to the test.
This is technically the original i30N. Obviously back in 2017 it was only offered in a manual and only offered as a hatchback, but what they did do is have two performance options. You had the lower powered one and this one, the performance pack, and they've now scrapped the lower powered one because everyone just wanted the performance, meaning you get a lot of cool additional extras as standard. First thing to notice with the manual version on the upgraded one is it has a race clutch, which makes it particularly difficult to start if you're not used to that kind of thing. It just means you need to be really precise with it, put a bit more power down than you would in a usual manual, and you'll be fine. It instantly feels really rough around the edges. The suspension is so firm in the N mode as well. The steering's really heavy. I love it though. It is so much fun. You really have to drive it. It is a very driver's focused car, especially with that manual box, because it's not an easy box. It's very rewarding, but with that clutch, you really have to get it right. And as you can see by the camera, how shaky and tough the suspension is as well. But it all adds up to a very rewarding car, and a car that's very focused, and it lifts your mood. It really eggs you on and you want to keep driving it. Again, it's got automatic rev matching. You can turn it off, but it's actually quite nice because you can change gear and really focus on the drive than having to mess around with the revs. There are thousands of customizable options for the driving modes, messing around with suspension, steering, throttle response, a lot, meaning the combinations are endless and you can really find the one that suits you. Rather than most cars where you adapt your driving to suit the car, this car adapts to you. The whole ethos of the i30N was meant to be a driver's car. They're tested around the Nürburgring and they've done plenty of laps to earn that N badge. And this one in particular, you've got a proper handbrake for starters with a 6-speed manual gearbox, along with all the things like the rev matching, the driver modes. Proper driver's car that is really engaging. You are making a difference as a driver and the car is not controlling you, which is what I absolutely love about it. These have been tested with a Nürburgring in mind, meaning when they've been built, they've had all of that in mind. So you can really tell that. I mean, I'd love to get one of these out on a track to see what they're really capable of and push it to its limits, because around these B roads, the corners are so easy for it that you can't push much more without being dangerous or speeding. So it handles it so well on the roads whilst being so involving that next level is going to be so much fun. These cars are very unique and they really shook up the hot hatch industry because they're not competitors directly to the Golf Rs, RS3s, and they're not a top trumps winner, but it certainly is going to be top of the table in terms of drive engagement and how much fun you have with this car. There are downsides to every single car you buy, and I mean, I have got a heavy right foot, but the fuel economy in this average has been 20 miles per gallon. But Hyundai do stay in the 30s, but obviously it depends how you drive it. And then hot hatches, 9 times out of 10, you're buying them so you can get mid-30s in your day-to-day life. But when you're putting your foot down on those B roads and really enjoying yourself, You're not bothered about what fuel consumption it's doing, even in high fuel prices.
Now onto the DCT. Hyundai introduced the 8-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission to provide the sporty experience of driving a manual with the convenience of an automatic. They use a wet-type transmission which uses oil to cool the clutch components, creating less friction and allows more torque through the gearbox. But does the planned sequential feeling DCT really provide as much fun as the manual? Everything else is the same, so now it's down to the gearbox. Let's get going.
Now into the DCT version. So again, the original one didn't come in DCT and they've since upgraded that. Job number 1, in mode fully engaged, traction control off, ready to go. The DCT does seem to be louder in terms of pops and crackles, which sounds awesome. Like any automatic in a performance car, you have the options of fully automatic or paddle shift. The paddles are quite a good size on this and they do move with the steering wheel, making gear changes a lot easier and you're not fumbling around trying to find them. The shifts in it though, in fully automatic, are really quick. It has an N shift system as well, which is very, very clever. What the N shift system does is help maintain the revs in the engine when the throttle's above 90%, helping balance the car. You also have something called an N grin. I mean, the names are fantastic, what they've come up for it. And what that does, it gives you like a 20-second boost. So it's very similar to like the Porsche Sport. That little 20 seconds of boost is a lot of fun. The DCT version is £2,000 more, but with that you get 0.5 seconds quicker to 60. Like the i30N manual that we drove, a lot of it's pretty much identical and more just the gearbox, 0 to 60 and bits like that. You still have all your driving modes, your N mode, your sport mode, and like now when we're passing some horses, we can pop it in eco and the exhaust should quieten just a little bit, which actually eco makes the car really quiet. It also has an N-track sense shift, which means it'll know when you're on track and you are really going for it, which makes the performance of the car a lot sweeter.
The best part of all cars is this performance setting, where you find your lap timers, everything you need to know in performance wise, and my favourite bit is that N-track sense shift, aka race mode, and we're going to see what the 0 to 60 times really like.
It's not a very easy launch control system to try and work out, whether that's maybe a little bit silly. You do get quite a lot of wheel spin when you're setting off from 0 to 60, but as soon as it grips up, those Pirelli tyres actually warm up really quickly and you're away. The DCT box is actually surprisingly enjoyable, and I thought I wouldn't enjoy it as much as the manual, but actually it doesn't really take away from the whole drivability of the car too much, because all you have to do is just flick it into paddles and you're away. Regardless of the automatic box, the handling still is near enough identical. It grips in so well at the front, you take corners at quite a good speed and you really feel connected with the car. And some could even argue that because you have got the automatic box, there's less room for driver error. The car's very clever at knowing what gear to be in, and that means you're not unsettling the car with harsh gear changes or changing mid-corner. The car knows what to do and it takes that stress away from you as a driver. So if you were looking at maybe taking one on track, that could potentially be a good option as a starting point, but in terms of fun, you don't actually lose out on too much.
And last but not least, the Fastback. The engine and interior is identical, with this particular car being a DCT. So we have the coupe style looks, a slightly bigger boot and small chassis tweaks, as well as a few other extras. But how different is it to the hatchback? Let's get going.
i30N Fastback. First thing we're going to do is press the lovely flag button. So ESC will be off in custom mode, press button. So we've got exhaust sound, Sport Plus, LSD Sport, ESC off, traction Sport Plus. Everything's ready to go. Even with the i30N Fastback. It shows that the hatchback wasn't just a fluke. It's got the same performance engine, giving us 271 brake horsepower. The chassis, it has some minor tweaks to it, but it still handles very well. With the addition of the family aspect, having 5 doors, the longer tailback as well, and a bigger boot, which means you can have fun like this, but also take your kids to school and get you shopping in the boot. Now the rear, the boot sits 5mm lower, which gives you that nice swoop-in saloon style, whereas the front and sides and interior are identical, so there's no need to go over that all again. But it's the drive and the chassis tweaks and all that little additions make any difference for how fun it can be. The front end still really digs in and grips, and it's got very similar handling characteristics as the hatchback. I mean, you can notice a little bit of a difference with some of the tweaks, like the springs being upgraded, and you've got the extra front anti-roll bar as well, just to help combat the length of it. But it does feel a bit more refined. Obviously, it's a little bit quieter in the cockpit. You can still hear that exhaust popping and banging behind you, but you can notice it is slightly different. It is longer. The view out the back is quite poor. It is that step in between. So with having the 5 seats, the bigger boot, you do want that little bit more comfort, because it's that other step Hyundai have created for compromise. So it's not quite up to the Kona end. If you want that fun and playability of a hot hatch, this is that option with the practicality added into it. If you want something that also looks a little bit more grown up, the sleek saloon style looks really add that to it. It's very sleek and sexy with a scooped roof. Again, it kind of reminds me of the difference between a 1 Series BMW and a 2 Series BMW, and I've always been a fan of the sloped backs. However, I feel this handles better than the 2 Series BMWs because it's kept the characteristics that make the hatchback so good. So you can still class it as a hot hatch. To upgrade to the Fastback version, you're looking at only £500 more, which is actually really reasonable because you are getting the extra boot space and you're not lacking in any performance. It doesn't feel like you're on edge as much like you do in the hatchback. Even with traction control completely off, it is so stable, which whether they've done that because when you're buying one of these, you've more got the family aspect in mind or the more sensible option in mind. So obviously you don't want it to be on an edge. I'm not too sure, but I miss that a little bit. Suspension actually feels not as firm as in the hatchback. Again, whether that's because it's more composed or whether the end setting I've got it in is actually a nicer suspension setting, I don't know. But it does make it feel a little bit more usable because the bumps aren't chucking you all over the place. So well, if it is the setting, I need to know which one that is. Have it, guys. That is the Hyundai i30N in manual, DCT and fastback, and the differences between them all. Now, I must admit the i30N has stolen my heart and I definitely get one, but I really couldn't decide between the three. I'm going to have a think about that, but for now, you guys know the drill. To make my journey your journey, like, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!